Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 7 of the Partnership Guys podcast. Today, we're going to spend some time talking about fundamental focus. Fundamental focus is something that we do on a regular basis, and it's about understanding what our personal goals are and how we can structure the business and structure the work that we do and structure the partnership, most importantly, in order to allow each of us to achieve our own individual goals. A lot of this is about making sure that we stay aligned so that we understand what each person's goals are, and so that we can help each other achieve those goals. These are not business goals. These are not KPIs. These are not things that we're trying to achieve inside the business. It's more about figuring out and talking about what we're trying to achieve on a personal level. That could be something like traveling more. It can be something like, being home because I need to take care of my kids or an aging parent or something like that. It could be that I want more fulfilling work. It could be anything you want, what you want to do. And one of the real benefits of being an entrepreneur and having your own business is it allows you to be able to have that ability to structure the business in a way and structure the work that each partner is doing so that you can achieve and work towards those personal goals as well as towards a successful business. The three of us, first thing that we did when we partnered up, the three of us for the Partnership Guys, is we sat down and talked about, okay, what do we want this business to do for us? It wasn't about what we're going to do for the business. That came later. The first conversation was, what do we want this business to do for us? How do we want it to help us achieve our personal goals? So, Rob, do you have any thoughts on, what fundamental focus means to you and how you've used that concept over the years?
Absolutely. Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate it. It's really important because we we start a business, especially a partnership. For the most part, talk about the business. We talk about how we're going to sell, what we're going to sell, how we're going to, do our marketing, social media, those kinds of things. And it's one of the things when I read your book that really struck me, like a lot of things, was that you don't talk about those personal things. You don't talk about your personal goals and how that does affect your time and your energy. And when there are things that you want to do outside the business, to me, it's best for the partnership that you do those things. It makes you happier, more fulfilled. And so for me, one of those things was my four daughters was really important to me from when I was really young, that I had this vision of being very involved in their lives. And I played sports, and my vision was if they were, if I was fortunate enough and they enjoyed sports and happy, healthy, and they all did. And so when they were young, and especially in those years when I had a 12, 10, 8, 6-year-old, just starting. And I was very involved in their sports. And so there were days where 4 o'clock would come on a Friday, and I had games all week, all night Friday night and all weekend, Saturday, Sunday. And yeah, there were business things that I could have done then. And in the great partnerships I've had, like with the three of us, that understanding has been there, that those conversations have been had. And then in the one bad partnership I had, those conversations didn't happen. And there were issues with that. When I was on the basketball court, it was an issue to my neighbor that I wasn't working. I was, quote unquote, on a court with my kids.
And we were talking about that the other day about that bad partnership and how you guys never had that conversation about what's important to you and about your fundamental focus. And, you were describing how that really impacted the partnership.
Of course. Yeah, no, of course. We barely knew each other, but we had a great idea. To us, there was a short window of opportunity, and there was in a lot of ways. It was a solar company, and this was 2008, 2009. Incentives were through the roof in New Jersey, and we saw that window of opportunity, and that's what we talked about, is the business window of opportunity. We didn't talk about what that would do for ourselves individually, what that would do for our families, what the time commitments is. He had a full-time job during the day, and I respected that. But there were things that, I had also, whether it was night with my kids or other things, family, friends. And, when that respect level, those conversations didn't happen. So the respect and trust level, just went down the drain very quickly because we didn't have that mutual understanding of what we each wanted out of, this business and our lives.
Yeah, when Todd and I first partnered up, 25 plus years ago, again, one of the first things we did was really talk about what our personal goals were. And, for me at the time, I had young kids and I wanted to make sure that I was home to be able to raise those kids, just like you were talking about. I wanted to be very involved as a father. That was really important to me. Todd's goals were totally different. His personal goals were very different. Yet somehow we were able to structure the business in a way that, allowed us each to be able to achieve our personal goals, even though they were so different at the time and continue to be different, up to this day.
Well, they continue to change to a certain extent. You know what I mean? It's I look at the fundamental focus as my North Star. Like that's why I get up and do what I do. That's the direction I want to go. A couple of things have changed, a couple of things haven't. And when I say they can change, they do change, just not on a weekly basis. You know what I mean? It's more through stages of life. So when we first sat down and started working together, I had no kids. I was again doing what young men do. But what I really wanted was to be creative and dive into something and build something again. That was important to me at the time. I needed a creative outlet. And a lot of people don't look at business as a creative outlet, and I absolutely do. That's part of the game as far as I'm concerned. And it was super important to me. You know, share that one. That's one that I had years ago. It's just the ability to be creative in my life. I wasn't putting energy and effort into doing anything artistic. So this is where I use that, and that really helped me kind of, and just realizing that I can do this in a partnership, and let that partner know where my head's at was liberating. Now, to your point, our fundamental focus is some are aligned, some are completely independent, or some are just delayed. Because now, as a father of young children, I'm not going to miss those moments. So I'm setting up the business, and this, to be able to make sure I have all those moments. And just to name a couple, but that, 25 years ago wasn't an issue, wasn't a thing. It is now,
Yeah.
to the purpose here.
It's interesting you bring that up because as you're talking, I'm thinking about my fundamental focus and how it's changed over the years. Yet one of the things that hasn't changed over the years is my desire to be able to help people solve problems. As a scientist, as a chemist, when we first bought that business back in the late '90s, bought Kramer Industries way back when, I was not a natural salesperson. Yet the role of the salesperson for that business is to solve technical problems. And so up to this day, I continue to talk to people as a salesperson. And it's so unnatural for me to be able to achieve my fundamental focus of being able to help people solve problems. That makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm adding value to the process. And so, I've been doing that for all these years, even though it's definitely not my natural state to be in
And it's
sales.
part of the reason why we're doing this, right? Is so we can all help people through the consulting, through the education, through podcasts like this, and knowing that that's important. I always said you'd be a fantastic college professor. Though you'd be great at it.
That was a different life.
Yeah, without a doubt, though, I think you'd be great. So, how do I, knowing that you like to help people solve problems, and after working in Kramer for a couple dozen decades, how do we get you new problems so your brain can work a little bit different? So that's why we're leaning in on, or that's one of the reasons why we leaned in heavy on TPG and the consulting aspect of the people that we're helping, people that are in distress. We want to give them what we've learned so they don't have to make the same mistakes.
And that's for me, it's just seeing what you guys are doing and how you put together, the playbook for it. It just made it so easy for the three of us to have those conversations and talk about what we wanted. And one of the things for me personally, after I went through the 10-year lawsuit, it ended in 2018. I buried it all. It's in the corner of a closet, and people would bring it up to me. I didn't want to talk about it. I kind of buried it, and partially that was selfish. That was, it's a story, and the red flags that I saw, and going through it all, and my family being there, and my neighbor and I having completely different fundamental focuses. When I saw what you guys were doing, it made me start to bring that out, and I truly I want to tell my story so that people don't have to go through what I went through in so many ways, raising young kids and having a neighbor. And it started with, on paper, a really good business. Like, money flowed in quickly, and there's just so much more to a partnership than just that. And also, there are so many great things that it would drive me crazy when people would say, "Oh, that's why you don't do business with friends." I have so many friends. I've done so many incredible businesses with friends. And those friends and those great business partners, they would leave me alone when I would do things with my kids, knowing that that's what I wanted to do and made me happy. They would make sure not to call me or email me because they knew I would want to deal with it. And they had that respect, whereas my neighbor and I didn't have that from the jump. And you need it.
That's the difference between creating a business by default, not design, right? Which I'm sure we'll talk to everybody about.
Yeah, I mean it's hard enough to achieve your goals in life. And then if you're struggling with your partner, if you're struggling with the work that you're doing all day long, if you're struggling with having success because you're not leading with your strongest or with your strengths, it's miserable. It's not, what's the point? As an entrepreneur, you have an opportunity to really craft and, like Todd said, design, your business and design your partnership. And, don't just accept that that's the way it has to be. Communicate and talk about, what's important to you, and if the business is not allowing you to achieve those things, or at least start working towards those things, have those conversations, right? I mean, with the fundamental focus stuff, even though it doesn't change frequently, at least once a year, and probably more frequent than that, we sit down and talk about, okay, what's still important to us? And a lot of times from year to year, it hasn't changed much, but we definitely sit down and have a conversation about and communicate about what is important to us. And is the work that we're doing allowing us to work towards achieving those goals? When I was young, like I said, I had young kids. I wanted to be home with the kids. Now my kids are all grown up. They're in various parts of the country. I want to travel. I want to be able to take the time to have long weekends and go visit my kids and, hopefully soon grandkids. And, that's a totally different kind of way to work than what I did years ago. But, having good partnerships and being able to communicate that and trusting that my partners understand what I need, right? And as long as it's not in conflict with what they need, and it never will be if you communicate well, it will never be in conflict. You'll figure it out. I'm able to do the things that I want to do now. And I'm thankful to my partners for them allowing me to be able to do that and stepping up when they need to. And, I step up other times when they need stuff.
Yeah, it definitely starts with the communication, but it doesn't end there. You have to constantly talk about it. And same thing for me. I talk about how my time in the afternoons, nights, weekends was really busy with my kids when they were young. Now it's relatively open. I see my kids hang out, it's great, but I have time on the weekends. So most weekends now, Saturday afternoon, you call me, and what am I doing? I'm working, and that's what I want to be doing. It's a time, but Todd is with his young kids. I leave them alone. I say, enjoy your weekend with the kids. We'll talk Monday, and that's the end of it. For me, though, I'm working, and there's no, keeping score. It's I enjoy everything I'm doing, and I certainly want my partners to feel the same way that I'm with them, and I want them to enjoy. I want you to travel, Stephen. That's what you want to do, and that changes. You travel for a year, and then you say, you know what, I've changed, my fundamental focus, and now this is what I want to do, and whatever that is, I want to support that in every way, because a happier business partner just makes a better business. My neighbor and I had a good business, but we were miserable business partners. We were unhappy, angry, doing things to sabotage ourselves, the business, each other. It was just bad. But the great partnerships I've had, the things we've accomplished are amazing together.
Just to touch base on what you were just talking about. This isn't a do it once and it's done type of thing. This is part of our individual and our group annual strategy and planning, just to see what has changed. Things might slowly take a change. You don't realize it over the course of the year. Re- it's more stages in life than it is years, but it's matter. We're all in different stages of life at different times. So it's a matter of just being very open about that and where your head's at and what you plan, what your focuses are moving forward, not just for the year. That's a goal. This is your focus. It just makes sense to kind of do this at the same time as you're doing your goal planning and all that stuff. So it wasn't like we had this conversation 25 years ago and we haven't had it again. We have it frequently, at the very least annually. And if, obviously if something changes during the year, it's like, that's fine. And we talk about it because we have the open lines of communication, but it's got to go part of your partnership hygiene.
Fundamental focuses are typically not something that you can measure directly. Like, how do you measure, I want to travel more? How do you measure how much, I want to spend more time with my family? I mean, these are softer objectives in your life, but they're actually more important than a lot of the business goals that you have. And really, being able to understand your partner's fundamental focus leads you to maintaining alignment, which leads you to a successful business, which leads you to be able to achieve the things that you want to achieve, related to your fundamental focus. And it's just that circle. And when that circle breaks, and Rob knows this, from his partnership that he was just talking about, when that circle breaks, you're on a downhill slide that is really hard to recover from, and so that's why it all starts with understanding your partner's fundamental focus and being sensitive to what their needs are, what their desires are as a person, not as a business person, as a person.
And you do it once a year, and that's great, but that's a deep dive and a long, look at everything. You do it, I'll argue, on a daily basis, multiple times a day. You could say on a Friday, hey, this is what I'm going to do this weekend. And all of a sudden, your kid's not feeling well or whatever, and your fundamental focus for that weekend just changes. In business, it's hard. And as a business partner, to tell your partner, hey, everything I just said, at least for this weekend, is off the table. I'll get back at it Monday. You need a partner who understands that. And then you also, as a good partner, come Monday, you're back at it, like you've never been at it before, to make up for that time that you gave. It's a two-way street, and always looking out for each other and the business.
Which all ties into our last episode talking about the 60-40 rule, right? And how you want to manage expectations. So all this stuff is tied together, and it all makes sense. And it all works. But again, it really starts kind of with the fundamental focus and really understanding what's important to you as a person, and how do I communicate that to my partner so that they understand that it's important. So I think that we've covered fundamental focus. I thought it was a good conversation. Thank you guys for being open about what's important to you. This is the Partnership Guys podcast. You can find this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. We encourage you to check out the website at thepartnershipguys.com. And we appreciate you spending the time listening to us and hopefully learning something. Reach out if you have any questions, and we will catch you guys next time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, buddy.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Stephen. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.